Welcome, IT changemakers, to the DEX Show with Tim Flower and Tom McGraw. Let's get into it.
Hello, changemakers. Welcome to the DEX Show. It's a very special episode today because we are going back to the root, back to the origins of the show, which is to say we welcome back our first ever guest on the first ever DEX Show almost 3 years ago. And our three-time returning guest, he is none other than the famous, the renowned principal analyst at Forrester, Andrew Hewitt. What's up, Andrew? Great to see you again, man. How are you?
Oh, it's so good to be back here. I was trying to remember how many of these I've been on. So it is 3 then.
Think so. Yeah, I think so.
We need to do like a Saturday Night Live thing where we could be a jacket. We need maybe a blue
yeah, exactly.
the three timers jacket.
Okay, we can.
I appreciate the invite.
We'd have one for Jeff. We'd have one for Andrew. Who else would we have? We'd have a couple of others. But it is always a pleasure to have you back on, sir. And one of the things we started doing more recently, as you now know, Andrew, is our super producer Catherine Shea. She sends out these lovely little questionnaires to our guests, and sometimes we get them back, sometimes we don't, which is cool. Sometimes we forget to send them out, no doubt. But we did, in your case, get it back, and we asked people about their hobbies and da. And in your case, of course, we know something about your hobbies, not only because obviously you're a well-known rock climber, which is something you've worked into some presentations and reports as a very cool metaphor before, but we also know that you are a rock star. Well, not a rock star, not saying you're not a star, but a rock music maker. And we know this, of course, because your music serenaded us at the end of the first ever DEX Show. So if somebody's listening, they want to hear Andrew's Dick Dale style surf instrumental music. It's very cool. Go all the way back to that first episode, go to the end of it, and you'll be able to hear it. So we did get information, Andrew, on your hobbies, of course. But what really stood out to me, and it was you described it as maybe a little morbid for the show, and I say au contraire, was what's the motto you live by? And this is what you live by: memento mori, which of course means is Latin for remember that you have to die, which is a little morbid, but it's also an interesting one. Come on, Andrew, tell us how real is this motto? How deeply embedded in you is it?
I was wondering if you would bring it up for the podcast.
Yeah, man, it's a good one.
It is a bit morbid, but there's nothing that really gets you moving in the right direction than considering your own mortality. So, memento mori is basically this idea that we have a limited time on Earth, so you have to make the best of everything in every moment that you have, and sometimes you gotta make tough decisions and make a change and those types of things. And so I try to keep that in mind with a lot of things that I'm doing, especially with my health. There's certain things fitness wise that I want to do in my 30s that I want to make sure I do those now, because as I get older I won't be able to do them, for example. So I got that from a lot of like Stoic philosophy. There's a lot of good podcasts and things out there around Stoicism, and it seems to be having a bit of resurgence. But memento mori is kind of a classic Stoic phrase, and so I try to remember that as much as I can. Like, we only have a limited time here, so let's make the best of it and really get out there and try to accomplish something great.
I love it because when you think back to some of the events when a loved one passes or a friend passes away, it gives you that wake up shot, right? This puts everything else into perspective. I really got to think about, but being intentional outside of those moments, I think is a really good thing for us and healthy thing for everybody to do. Think about that when it's not top of mind. It's pretty cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. You gotta be careful not to do it too much. But
it's true.
It could be a little bit heavy if you're thinking that every day, but I think, maybe once a month, a meditation or something, think about that. And I think it puts things into perspective, into focus as well.
Try not to think of it halfway up one of your rock faces, Andrew. How about that?
Yeah, there's certainly circumstances where you don't want to think about it at all. Yeah.
Keep it at arm's length, right there. Right. Well, it's a lovely preamble, gentlemen. But we've got some DEX matters to discuss as well. We can't just be talking stoicism and mortality all the whole hour. So listen, let's kick it off with Andrew, with some of the biggest Nexthink news we've had to really talk about for a while. I'm sure a lot of people have seen, but we just a couple of weeks ago now announced our first ever acquisition. It's of AppLearn, which is a UK-based company specializing in digital adoption software. So it's almost like they have a great metaphor for it, Tim. What is it? They say it's like the Google, what is it? What is it? The GPS of applications. So it's kind of pop-ups on the screen that can guide users through adapting to new processes or completely new applications, or when they join organizations, or when applications and processes are updated, etc., etc. So we think it's a really, really exciting kind of extension of what Nexthink offers, and an interesting place to start with you, Andrew, is your thoughts on the aptness of digital adoption and digital dexterity, another sort of buzz term that's very relevant to it within DEX. I mean, do you see it as a natural part of it, as an extension of it, as a new part, as an incongruous part of it? What's your view?
Mm-hmm. Well, it brings me back to the original definition that Forrester had around DEX, which is still our definition around DEX, which is that it's the sum of perceptions that employees have working with technology. And if that perception is that the tool is hard to use, that it's slow, that it makes no sense, the user experience is terrible, right? That's going to impact your overall digital employee experience. So I absolutely think that tools that help improve adoption of digital tools are part of that DEX landscape, right? Super important. When I talk to a lot of DEX teams out there today, they often have digital adoption, platforms in addition to, the tools like Nexthink, for example. So they're really important in that kind of quiver of different tools that you can use to understand the user experience. And so I think we'll see a lot more of that. A lot of the clients I've talked to, and been working with for a number of years, like they made all these investments during the pandemic. You bought this SaaS app and this SaaS app, and you've invested in Microsoft Teams or in Zoom or whatever. And oftentimes they're just not getting the value out of the tool because the user doesn't know how to unlock all the different features. And so a lot of the clients that I speak with today come to me and say, how can I make my organization more digitally savvy? And digital adoption tools are certainly one way to do that.
Getting it all in one pane of glass, I think, is obviously going to kind of decrease the confusion around all of these new applications as well. Thinking about, I've written IT, but thinking about maybe EUC as a profession more generally, what are the implications for this suddenly being something that EUC professionals, IT professionals can start to influence, start to get involved in, which is to say more directly engage with user behavior, user learning, etc.?
Well, I think it's interesting, especially as the user interface is changing for the PC. The major, area that people have spent all their time for the last, however many years is changing with things like generative AI, and like being able to go in and use natural language querying on your PC to go and look up things and get information and create content. Like that whole landscape is completely changing, and so it's forcing a lot of end user computing professionals to say, okay, what does that like design and user experience of the actual device actually look like? I mean, I think we just haven't thought about that. We're always thinking about specific applications. So it's not just at the application level, but it's also at the operating system level too. And so there's a big opportunity for end user computing folks to get closer to the actual user journey that employee is going on, rather than just kind of your traditional performance metrics. So that's kind of the opportunity, is being a lot more human centric in terms of how we look at usage of that technology versus just making sure it's not crashing and that it's performing well, et cetera.
Yeah. And I guess it kind of leads us perfectly to the question of generative AI. Very big impact on DEX and on the sort of Nexthink's offering over the last 12 months alone. What's your analysis of the progress of this marriage of the two so far?
So I expect generative AI to be part of any DEX solution going forward. Like it's going to be a feature that's expected from every customer that buys a tool. And when we look at our overall DEX model today at Forrester, we say there's basically four pieces. There's insights, so it's the data you're collecting. There's the people that are in charge of the DEX initiative. There's your metrics, like your XLAs. Then there's your future fit tech, that tech that just comes along and just completely changes the user experience and improves the digital employee experience. Generative AI is that, right? So it is providing a new user experience that's fundamentally better. So just by virtue of adopting it, you are improving digital employee experience. So I do see a lot of organizations just investing in generative AI as that front-end user experience and really claiming a lot of benefit in terms of their overall DEX strategy. But there's the other side of that, which is not the end user side, but there's the administration side. And I think that's where a lot of these really interesting generative AI use cases start to come out. When you think about improving root cause analysis, which is still a major challenge today in the space, right? Being able to query all of that historical data and use natural language processing and simplify and make that a lot faster for IT administrators. AI is going to have a huge impact there. Predictive in terms of the overall user experience, being able to go into the console and say, give me a list of devices that are most likely to fail because of a battery issue over the next 6 months, right? You couldn't do that before. You had to model that out and you had to filter and go through the console and dig deep into the data. The natural language piece really brings that data to the fore and brings us closer to insights rather than just a giant, dump of data. But even some other things, like a lot of our clients are talking about knowledge-based article creation with generative AI within DEX tools. Like it should be pretty easy just to put together something that says, if you have this issue with your device, this is how you fix it. Those types of things, I think, will go a long way in giving people additional resources within their DEX initiative, rather than having to go through all this superhuman manual effort all the time, which tends to be a lot of what DEX teams end up doing, is that manual work. So I think there's benefits on both sides.
I'd actually like to see DEX and AI put an end to the KB article. If I can generate and create a KB article to tell you how to fix it, AI and DEX should just fix it. Don't tell me to read an article and go fix it. So I think there's an evolution here where AI and DEX, in my opinion, are aligned. I'm curious what your opinion is. Pedro and everyone at Nexthink really likes to emphasize that Nexthink, the original product and the patent were built on an AI postgraduate study. Pedro put a ton of work into that, and it's founded on AI. I'm curious what your thoughts are on whether they're kind of mutually exclusive. Does one depend on the other? What's the dynamic between AI now and DEX kind of moving forward?
Well, I think anytime you're trying to make sense of a large quantity of data that's constantly changing, that's where AI really comes to your benefit, right? Because it helps simplify access to that data. It makes it quicker to go and harvest that data and gain insights. It allows you to summarize that data quicker and send that out to an executive to show, here's what's happening with our digital employee experience. So it's a really natural fit. At the end of the day, like DEX tools are, they're data tools. They're all about giving you that data, right? And so that goes hand in hand with AI. Of course, DEX is different than some other monitoring tools in the sense that there's a lot of remediation that's happening with DEX tools. We are actually fixing it. We're not just like observing it, right? So that's a little bit of a difference, but AI helps with that too, by giving us that insight to say, this is most likely what's going to work in this particular circumstance, for example. So I see it as a very strong natural alignment. Like I said, I think it'll be embedded in every, major DEX tool. Is, if you're not using AI as a vendor, you're going to get left behind.
Yeah, completely agree. So Tom and I were thinking back, we've got over 100 episodes. You've been on at least 3. It could have been very easily someone else who mentioned this, but we think it was you that talked about how IT professionals should really be looking to automate their role. Kind of the job of the help desk is to get rid of the help desk. This is a little different. IT people should be automating their role. I'm curious if you remember that, but even if you don't, what are your thoughts about IT automating their roles in the context now, not so much of automation, but AI, right? How should an IT professional look to their role related to what AI will do to it?
It's a great question. And I do think it was me, first of all, that
Phew.
said that. But it wasn't my original idea. I believe that it was my manager, Glenn O'Donnell, who first told me about that idea. And this is a kind of a consistent theme across the tech industry, is that the people that move up find a way to do things faster, that provide more value, reduce the overall cost, right? People get wrapped around the axle with DEX because of some of the cost elements, but really it's about reducing costs is like a major piece of DEX. It just so happens that it also improves the experience as well. And so when you're thinking about kind of AI and automation in terms of the impact on the overall IT administrator, it's about creating more value with less effort and reducing that overall cost. So at the end of the day, I think if you are skilled enough to be able to make sense of what's happening with AI within the DEX platforms, and you're able to drive a lot of automation, reduce cost, discover those root causes faster, show that you can improve the overall experience, you're going to be a rock star at work. Like that is the pathway going forward, is being able to take advantage of those AI capabilities and become kind of, we use the term at Forrester, AI literate. Become AI literate with your DEX tool, and that's going to help you open up a lot of different career paths. It's not going to be that you're going to be doing all the things that you did in the past in terms of writing scripts and doing deep dive root cause analysis, right? It's that technical stuff is going to be handled more and more by AI, but you're going to be playing the role of managing the AI, looking for quality. And you're also going to be playing a role in terms of interfacing more with the end user and really trying to understand more of the human element that underpins DEX. So it's a great question. Yeah. So I think that getting past those traditional tasks frees you up to do all these other things.
AI makes me better. AI doesn't replace me.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So that's the IT professional and the relationship with a technology capability. Let me put a different spin on the question. What are your thoughts about the relationship between an IT professional and the myriad of vendors that are out there today, all bringing new, unique, or somewhat unique capabilities? What do you think the relationship's going to be between the IT pro and the vendors? I guess the short way to ask it is IT getting overwhelmed with technology? Is there just too much technology for us to worry about right now?
It's a great question, and it's constantly evolving. One of the major questions is around monetization right now of AI. Like, are vendors going to charge extra for AI capabilities, or is that going to be embedded? I happen to think that all these DEX tools are going to have AI embedded in them. It's going to be this expectation, and customers out there are all facing these different requests from vendors that are saying, "Why don't you pay me extra for this AI capability?" Whether it's DEX or whether it's any other technology, right? That in itself is overwhelming. Like, which SaaS tools am I going to pay extra for AI versus where am I not going to pay extra, right? And so that relationship is going to be tricky to navigate over the next year or so as vendors figure out how they're going to monetize AI. Ultimately, I think what will happen is a lot of the smaller markets, and I would say DEX is included in this, ultimately get pushed towards AI as a feature within the product. I'm not paying extra. The bigger vendors out there, your giant hyperscalers, they can kind of throw their weight around, right? And so they often have a reason to charge extra, or they have some licensing play that they can charge extra. But it's harder when you're a smaller vendor. And so that's going to be something that a customer in IT is really going to have to think about: is where do I pay extra and where do I pull back? The other thing is trust, right? Everybody is new to this. They're integrating with different types of AI algorithms, whether they're from, open source or Microsoft or whomever, right? And so, how do you start to build that trust with the administrator as a vendor that these automations and these AI capabilities are actually going to do what they say that they're going to do? We're going to have some rocky times ahead in terms of mistakes and hallucinations and things like that occur there. So I think monetization is a major challenge. Trust is a major challenge. And I think the other major piece that is unknown today is everybody's talking about, co-pilots with a lowercase c, right?
Yep.
All of these conversational AI capabilities. It feels like everybody's creating a conversational AI. At what point does that become overwhelming for the end user and start to look at a more integrated approach? Maybe I want to have one single user interface that pings all these other, different areas that I can bring in that third-party data, for example. So that to me also feels like a challenge that we haven't really fully bumped into yet, but we will over the next 12 months.
I think there's an integration opportunity there to have two conversational AIs just talk to each other all day long.
Definitely.
What?
Definitely.
So we talked a little bit about AppLearn and bringing that digital adoption capability to the platform. We talked about maybe having too much technology out there for us to really absorb it all. But let's flip that question around. What is DEX as an IT discipline missing? Are there other emerging technologies out there that you think that you're seeing that could be related? Is there something that people are asking for that's not there? What do you see that might be missing?
Well, one thing that is coming up quite a bit, which is newer in the space, and you happen to have this too, is low code orchestration, right? A lot of tools out there today, right? It's very much manual in terms of building scripts and pushing them out, and you're doing it on a device by device basis. But bringing in low code into the DEX platform is going to be an absolute must for organizations going forward, because it just helps you to do that automation at scale. So it's not really AI. I mean, AI has a relationship there, but it is fundamentally about doing like mass automation across your entire energy computing estate. So that's one of the major areas that I expect, is a mostly a gap in the space today, or is new. And so that's going to be an area where we'll start to see a lot more maturation over the next 12 months, 24 months, I would say. The other interesting piece that I don't think many people are talking about is the rise of the AI PC and specific silicon that is designed for running AI workloads at the edge. That's going to have an impact on DEX for sure, in terms of performance and battery life and things like that. And there's going to be more of a conversation between what's happening at the operating system and software level, and then what's happening at the hardware chip level as well. I think there is this ecosystem that's coming together around DEX that includes, the traditional, DEX vendors, includes the operating system, and also includes the chip and the role there as well. So that's going to be an interesting area of potential integration longer term, is being able to tap into some of that chip technology to improve the overall digital experience.
Speaking of the overall digital experience, something we've spoken about before, Andrew, maybe a couple of times down the years, and I think something that Forrester, along with Nexthink, has really long advocated for pretty directly, and something that a lot of organizations which are really ahead of the game in terms of their DEX strategy and their DEX success is around this idea of DEX maturity. Is the idea of like cultural changes, not just explicit investment, but explicit structures that facilitate and support DEX, explicit professionals who are explicitly focused on DEX. And that all fits into the overall idea of a DEX maturity model. And I'm interested in getting your updated view on where the market is in relation to this. But first of all, maybe spell out in brief what it is that Forrester directly would advocate that I haven't said already.
So when we look at the overall maturity model, I basically see three major steps. I mean, you could slice and dice it in a lot of different ways, but most customers today are in what I call more of like a fixer mentality, right? They're using the tool to fix things, and they're using it to drive a decent amount of automation. They're trying to set a solid foundation for the experience so that when I come into work every day, and this is a true story from one of our clients, I'm not experiencing a 25-minute boot up in the morning, every morning, with my device like that. There's a lot of customers that are in that realm. And maybe they're looking at a little bit of sentiment data, but it's usually just in the context of like a service desk interaction. So you kind of have this situation where DEX is kind of bifurcated across end user computing and service desk. The next level is you start to bring all that together, right? You start to have a broader holistic view into the experience. You're not just looking at the devices, but you're looking at applications and maybe network. Maybe that data is available within your service desk platform. And you're actually starting to collect sentiment on an ongoing basis. And I'm starting to understand, outside of the context of something went wrong, how is my overall experience as Andrew on a monthly basis or something like that, right? And so I'm getting more sophisticated in terms of my sentiment collection. I'm having a broader remit in terms of the data that I'm collecting and trying to understand about the experience. And there's a good chunk of, I would call them fairly mature customers that are in that realm. Like they have a DEX practice that's built up. They have people in charge of it. And they're really, taking a pretty holistic view. The next step breaks DEX out of IT. And it starts to say, what does DEX look like across the entire organization? And this is where like the most leading customers are today, in my view, and where they're really struggling is there's this constant battle between HR and IT DEX teams. Who owns the overall digital experience? I interviewed a leader of a DEX team at a large US financial organization for my last report. And she said, working with HR has been the bane of my existence as a DEX professional. Because there's a lot of bickering about who owns that overall experience. And so the next step is sort of breaking out of that and starting to say, okay, what is the end user journey across multiple technologies, some which are owned by IT, some which are owned by HR, some are owned by facilities, right? And start looking at that actual user journey of them trying to get something done and be successful at work, rather than looking at it in kind of these discrete areas. So that requires a huge cultural shift as well, which I'm sure we'll chat about. But that's, I think, the leading customers are they're trying to break out of this and make DEX this high level strategic initiative. In one case, I'm working with a client now that's actively trying to hire a chief DEX officer because they're having so much trouble, building that coordination, between the various groups that all want to have some impact on DEX, but don't all necessarily know what they're talking about.
Chief DEX officer. Love it.
Yeah.
Love
What's their number? What's their number?
Yeah, I was going to say, they're already a customer, Tim. Don't even worry about it. Come on. If they're not, they're hiring a chief DEX officer. They might want to listen to this show.
Plead the fifth on this one.
Okay. And in terms of numbers, you speak to more kind of proactive, so to speak, DEX users than perhaps anybody. And do you feel that this is a tipping point with regards to seeing more of that level of commitment, more of that clarity around what they want to achieve and how they're going to have to go about achieving it?
Yes, we're certainly at the tipping point. When we look at our adoption data, for example, for DEX tools, the majority of decision makers that we're looking at, over 50%, saying that they're actively implementing or have implemented. So we're at the stage now where, and this is at the enterprise level, where you have a lot of recognition that these tools are going to provide a lot of value. But we're also at a place where there's been a lot of adoption for many years, and people have got to kind of the end of their rope in terms of the use cases in some ways. Like they get to a point where they're able to automate and they have a DEX score and they're tracking that, et cetera. And then they get to this place where, okay, where do I go next? And the next place is that user journey. And they get pushed in that direction because they need to find other ways to create value, right? They have that super solid foundation. They're able to track the experience. And now it's about transformation of the DEX. And that requires, a lot of departmental coordination. So yeah, I think we're definitely at a tipping point.
I had a question for you next about sort of other cultural changes, and by all means, if there are any that stand out with regards to sort of internal DEX, let me know. But I kind of thought about sort of iterating on it slightly, because we've been having discussions this week as a team at Nexthink about the idea of investing in some external research where we ask EUC professionals, what do you think the future is for the service desk? Like what do you think? Do you think when you look ahead 4 or 5 years, 3 years, whatever it is, do you see a service desk still here? What succeeds it? What follows it? What will it be called? What will it be focused on? And actually, if I just update my question, Andrew, since we have you here today, and ask what your own view of that evolution is, and what do you think its time limit is, and what do you think its future is, its evolution?
Well, I think there's an interesting discussion right now happening on integration of multiple tool sets, whether that's service desk, DEX tools, endpoint management, software asset management. Those 4 areas are areas where it makes sense to share a lot of data. And so with that in mind, I think we'll start to see more integration between those tool sets and maybe even consolidation in the market. But what that ultimately does in terms of the service desk discussion is the service desk changes a bit. It's not just I don't think it fully goes away. you're still going to have issues. You're still going to have, technology is weird. Stuff happens. You're going to be calling in and not know what's happening. I don't think it's going to fully go away anytime soon, but I think the nature of it changes, where instead of becoming just a place that you call when things go wrong, it's also a place that you go to learn how to take advantage of new capabilities, where you gain access to new adoption capabilities, longer term, right? And it becomes more, not so much a center of excellence, but it's kind of the center of the DEX in the organization. I think that's fundamental transition that'll happen, is that it'll become less of like your traditional L1, L2, L3 service desk, and more focused on kind of enablement of the workforce in general. It'll have a broader remit, beyond devices. I expect things like, facilities, like, the conference room booking tools, for example, to be part of that longer term, maybe even some of the HR applications. So I think it'll evolve. I don't think it'll fully go away, because there's still going to be issues. But a lot of that is going to be driven, I think, from the tech stack, which is becoming increasingly consolidated.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I'm looking forward to getting this survey out, actually. I'm interested in what IT sees itself,
Yes, me too.
Andrew, wonderful conversation. Last question for you. It's still relatively early in the year, and you're Andrew Hewitt, so we got to ask, what do you foresee? What milestones, what expectations do you have for the rest of 2024?
You're our IT Nostradamus.
Come on.
Well, if you had asked me in December of 2023, I would have said there's going to be an acquisition in the DEX space in 2024. So I wish you had asked me then, because I would have been proven right. But I don't think we're at the end of the acquisition phase, to be honest. I think there's a lot of forces in this market that are pretty interesting. You have an economy that's kind of roaring back to life with increased tech spending, but you also still have this pressure to consolidate and reduce costs from the CIO, CFO perspective. And so with that, people are going to be looking to consolidate in different ways, whether that's bringing additional tools into their existing DEX tool, or bigger vendors coming into the space. I would expect there to be more acquisitions. I'll predict right now that there'll be one more this year. So I think we're at this interesting tipping point you mentioned earlier, where there's a lot of different market forces all working together, that it feels like we're at this breaking point where there's going to be a major change in this space in 2024. And I'm very excited to see what happens. And obviously congrats to the whole Nexthink team for the acquisition already. So I think it's just the beginning, in my view.
We were just making sure your prediction came right. We just.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Some high obsequiousness from a vendor over here, but it was expensive. No, Andrew, thank you. Pleasure to have you back on, mate. And let's say it was a third. Let's not even count, and let's assume we see you again in about a year. And good luck with another waves coming up. So best of luck with that, and lovely to see you again.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it, and great to see you both as well. And thank you so much for having me.
Cool. Thanks, Andrew.
Pleasure.
To make sure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure to leave a rating of the show. Just tap the number of stars you think the podcast deserves. If you'd like to learn more about how Nexthink can help you improve your digital employee experience, head over to nexthink.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.